Hey guys,
Oh,
what's up? I'm an agnostic.
oh, okay,
Interesting.
okay. Have you had
Sorry, I
any
know.
discussions with Timothy Puka?
I don't think so, but we can have one right now.
Welcome, Timothy. Welcome. We don't bite.
Thank you guys. No, I've
How
talked
are you
with
doing, bro?
Muslims before. Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Just relaxing after work. So is it true? So I've talked to Muslims before, and I've had good conversations. One of the things they said was that time to them was kind of like, say, like an emotion and something that's there but not expressed until God expressed it. So
Oh, bro. First of all, you have to realize that there's no one Muslim theology, right? There
well,
are
that's what I'm asking. If you
multiple.
agree with that,
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah. There are multiple Islamic theologies. So in this room, dominantly, we are the Islamic philosophers.
Whoop, whoop.
So it's the Islamic philosophers, the school of Ibn Sina, Avicenna, as he is known in the West. So that's who we are.
so
Mostly
you can.
majority of the
I appreciate the
moderators, I believe.
insight. I appreciate that. A lot of my where I focus is on time and how theology interacts with the ideas and concepts of time. So I always try to ask that first.
Oh,
And
bro, you should
I
hear
thought,
about how we talk about time. It'll blow your mind away.
yeah, dude, that's what I'm here for, man. That's what I'm here for. And that's just one way I'd heard of it, which I thought was an interesting take. I don't know how much I'd be able to personally ascribe to it, but just an interesting idea of okay, this thing exists in a certain kind of dormant way until it's expressed, kind of like the way we would express
Okay,
it.
for us, time is eternal. The universe,
And
the material universe is eternal, and the time is eternal. There's no beginning
fundamental.
of the time. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So the
so uncreated.
no, it's not uncreated. It is dependent upon another, but it is still eternal. Why? Because if you're saying that the time is not eternal, right? That would entail the existence of time before time, because you are saying God created time at a specific moment, right? But if a God created time at a specific moment, right, that is still temporal, right? So you would have an infinite amount of time. So
They're
that's
both
what we
impossible.
believe in that.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
so
they're
we believe
both
that it's
impossible. I think the
they are
time
both
before
what?
time thing. I think it's kind of paradoxical. I think even though it seems like it has to be one or the other, they both seem impossible, leading me to kind of cynically believe there's something we're missing out on, maybe sensory wise, that we can't pick up on the actual truth of the matter. But what you said, I like what you said about the time before time. That's a really good point. I agree 100%. It kind of makes it seem like that's not possible. But on the other hand, if I'm thinking of an eternal amount of time,
Yeah, do you know about B
and I'm
theory?
thinking of I do know about B theory, but I think it's so in disagreement with my experience that I have a hard time accepting that there's no change.
No, there is change in a conscious sense. There's no change in an ontological sense. In the consciousness, obviously, our consciousness is moving through this stream of time, right? But
you
in
said the word
actual,
moving. You said the word. So if consciousness is moving, that means there's something happening outside of consciousness, which is change, which is that movement of the consciousness, which right there it can't happen. There's no change.
no, the consciousness itself is changing.
Consciousness is
Okay, but where does that changing end? Where does your consciousness end, and then all of a sudden there's no more change outside of that? You know what I mean?
What do you mean where consciousness ends?
Is consciousness immaterial?
Well, you're saying this change is contained within our consciousness, but where are we where is this containment ending? Where are we saying, okay, there's this bottled up area where there's change happening, and outside of it, there's no actual change. Where are we drawing that line? How are we deciding where this conscious? So all these different people have consciousness, but in between these people, there's no change. It's
No.
interesting.
So there is change, right? In the colloquial sense of the word that we use, there is change. Nobody is denying that change.
Yes, they are denying. The way I've heard explained by the people who were, by top men, is that there's no change in B theory of time.
Who
everything's
explained
already
that to you?
there.
And anyway, let's
it's by definition,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. I think we should start. The first topic is to start from the existence of God. Only then, these other more metaphysical problems, we can comment on these metaphysical problems once we know, or once we speculate about the existence of God, or once we present an argument about the existence of God. So that's the basis of all metaphysics, actually. So what do you think about that?
I think whatever the answer is, so far as I can tell, we're missing some piece of the picture. Whether it, we're
He's hinting
confined
a
to our
little bit to what
consciousness,
you're
we're
missing.
confined to our senses, and there's something outside of that. I think that might elucidate a
Okay,
bigger
no,
picture or
that's
an
that's
objective
very
truth.
good. I like your humility about our senses, but there are a few things that that I think you would agree that cannot be questioned, right? Like the three rules of logic, the three laws of logic. Do you think they can be wrong as well?
No.
Best guy.
Yes, absolutely.
Unless there's some kind of objective truth outside of our senses that explains how they could be.
Huh?
No, so these truths, the three truths of logic, by definition, are objective. So anything outside of our senses, watchable, no, invisible, visible, whatever it is, it is not going to be against these rules of logic. Why? Because when you say that something is against these rules of logic, it's basically just a contradiction, right? It's like saying a squared circle, right? It's just a contradiction in terms. It's like saying blah 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 blah. It's not even saying anything, right? So
Yeah, I
everything
get
that,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
go
like
ahead.
linguistically, it's forced to make sense. Like I know what you mean. Um, but outside of just like that linguistic, like I'm forcing this meaning to be in this because by definition I'm defining it that way. Like I get what you're saying, but in another way, there could just be something so foreign to us. Like if something sufficiently foreign enough to us that could change the way we think about things. I don't
But
know. Maybe not down to
you're
the
saying,
maybe
but
not
what it
down to the
sounds like you're
identity of law,
saying,
but
it sounds like you're saying is there's an impossibility can exist. That doesn't make sense.
Actually, brother, don't
well, maybe I'll
understand
have
the
to stop
system
short.
of existence. First, tell him what is the description
Exactly,
of
exactly.
existence.
This is why I was trying to start
Yeah.
on there. But
So
even
actually,
before that,
in
we
simple
have
words,
to.
Ilyas
Yes.
Baba, in simple words, we live in a system of existence beings, and in that system, there are some principles on which the system is based upon, and those principles are known as the laws of logic, on which every, let's say, existence, is based upon. So, did you get my point, brother? What is your name? Timothy? Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
You said
So,
existence.
yeah,
Sorry.
in very simple words, if you say that something is beyond from these three principles, then you are actually saying that it is non-existence. That thing is non-existence.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
it is just a
I'll bite the bullet
contradiction.
on the three laws of logic. But I would also fall back on that. It could just be a linguistic. It could just be something linguistically like I'm defining this word this way. Now I'm going to say this word means this thing that I just told you I defined it as. Now there's an objective truth to that because it's hindering on me. Can that thing be false? No, now you have this like ultimate objective truth, but it's kind of just a linguistic trick and maybe not super meaningful. As far as like reality goes, there still could be super fundamental things outside of our understanding that explain things and explain impossibilities, so-called impossibilities, like the infinite eternal time versus time from non-time kind of issues.
See, but the eternal time is not a logical contradiction for there to be a universe that's eternal, right?
I think it is. If you're saying an infinite past, I think there is.
What if we say there is no past? It is just a conceptual, let's
Then you
say,
have to
beforeness.
explain time from non-time.
No, if we say there is no
Timothy,
time, then
Timothy, let's leave time. Let's
yeah,
leave time for
yeah.
1 second.
If we
Can
say
you
there is
can you
no
talk
He
about
asked
actual
me.
laws of
time,
logic? Timothy, can you please tell me that if there are no laws of logic, what's the alternative?
What's the alternative to the laws of logic?
Yeah.
You're
So
telling me to like make up a new reality? I don't know.
do you believe that?
But logic is itself
I
reality.
already answered this. I think you just don't like the answer. Is that like, okay, these laws of logic are true, but how we don't know like how much of it is just a linguistic trick and how much of it is like a meaningful like basis of like how we understand reality.
Do you know what the three
It's the
laws,
only
brother?
meaningful basis of understanding reality.
That's why I made the whole example about like me defining something a certain way and then saying it is that thing. You know what I mean? I don't know if that landed or not, but that's what I was trying to
Elias,
say.
I think we're getting into semantics. Elias, let's go back to what you were saying you wanted to begin at and why you want to begin there.
So let's see. So first, but I think laws of logic are important, obviously, because if nobody accepts the laws of logic, right, we can't progress from there, because they could just reject the laws of logic. But let us just say the laws of logic
That's
do
fine.
represent reality, right?
Sure.
Because Timothy said, I'm, I'll bite the bullet on that, and I think every reasonable person would do that. Now the next question is the question of existence, right? So I'd ask all of you, all of you can think about this. Is existence in itself, right? I'm not talking about a particular existent. I'm talking about existence with CE. So the existence, is it dependent as a whole? Is existence dependent upon something else to exist? Or does it exist on its own? Or is it self-sufficient?
I would say independent.
Well, someone can say this idea of existence is just something that exists within the mind. It's a mind-dependent reality and doesn't actually exist objectively. No?
I'd say it's a fundamental independent concept.
Yeah, obviously it's a basic concept. And not only is it a concept, I'm saying the totality of all existence, right? Is it dependent or independent?
Like existence in its genus, or what do you mean?
The
No, the
totality,
existence itself.
existence itself, the totality of all existence. Is it dependent or independent?
I guess that would vary because in God's aspect, it would not be dependent.
No, man, no. We are not talking about right now. We are not talking about existence and whether it relates to God or anything. We are talking
Yeah,
about
we are
existence
talking
itself.
about existence,
Wujood,
coexistence.
wujood bima huwa wujood. Existence,
Oh, okay, yeah,
coexistence.
then it would be
Being
dependent.
qua being. Obviously, it cannot be dependent, right? Why? What's the proof for that? Because if existence is dependent, right, then what is it dependent upon? Because dependent by definition means dependent, right? So existence would be dependent upon something other than it, right? And if it is something other than it, then it would be non-existence, right? But non-existence, whenever there is existence, non-existence does not exist, right? Non-existence is only when there is no existence. So that's a contradiction in terms.
Is existence synonymous with just like reality?
Yes.
In this?
Yes.
Okay.
But reality is subjective.
Excellent, bro. Well, that's a different case. Reality is subjective in a different sense.
Yeah. So obviously existence cannot be dependent. So existence is independent. If existence is independent, then it by definition follows that there must be something in existence that is independent. Because if everything in existence is dependent, then existence itself would become dependent. And that's a logical contradiction, right? So there has to be something in existence that is absolutely independent and on which everything else is dependent.
Oh, like that first. Okay, because you're saying existence is independent, but there needs to be an object of that existence.
Yes, in which that independency is grounded. Otherwise, if everything in existence is dependent, then existence itself would be dependent. Think of it like this, right? You have mirrors, right?
I get it.
Yeah, you have mirrors. Now, you have an arrangement of mirrors, right? Or you have an arrangement of reflecting objects. Now, you tell me that this arrangement is passing on light, right? And there is nothing outside of this arrangement that is giving it light, right? So by definition, it follows from it that there is at least one object or one thing in the system which has light on its own, which is actually the source of light, right? And everything is reflecting its light. Because if there were only mirrors, if there were only reflectors, if there were only dependencies, right, then you would have no reality at all. You would have no light at all, because mirrors would just be there. No, they can't reflect unless they are given light at the first place, right? So that's a crude example of what it means to have, light on your own, what it means to have something that is existing independently.
And if it's too fast or you're not understanding something, ask questions. The first time I talked to Ilyas, I asked maybe too many questions.
I mean, it just seems like the state of affairs of reality to be such that things can exist would have to be independent.
Absolutely, there has to be one thing in reality at least that is independent. Everything else, the things, obviously the dependent things do exist, but there has to be something in reality that has to be independent. Otherwise, reality itself would become dependent, which is a logical contradiction. We just know it by its own fact that existence cannot be dependent.
Yeah, because if you start taking things away, like one by one from reality, just start stripping away things, and you get down to that last thing, and then you take that away, well, now there's no existence. So you need one thing there, like you said, to ground it.
Exactly. Wow, yeah, exactly, that's the thing.
Yeah, which is the fundamental principle of those dependent existence, the source of existence.
So what do you think, brother Timothy?
I think I'm hearing some interesting ideas right now. Did I miss a question right there? I'm sorry.
No. But welcome to Islam, brother.
Muslims always say that when I talk to them. I'm just trying to understand your point of view, and
I'm
No,
just
no,
kidding,
we are
bro. I'm
just
just
kidding.
kidding.
Oh, those are the other types of Muslim, bro.
I become
Yeah.
brother Timothy all of a sudden, and it's
To me,
No,
you're my brother if you were Muslim or you weren't Muslim.
yeah, even if you're our brother in humanity.
Alright, just repeat after me. Ashhadu.
They say
No,
that a
man.
lot
You
too.
get
They say
you
that a
can
lot
download the
too.
Muslim Pro app.
So one
he's gonna
thing,
make
No,
me
no.
call
Mention
myself a
without
dickhead or
anyone
something.
Waliullah.
because Timothy, you have prior experiences, I assume, with Muslims. A little bit about us, like Ilyas was saying, philosophers. We also are called, many of us are called Shias, 12-verse Shias. We follow these 12 imams. But we don't have this like concept of converting people so much as other maybe types of Muslims do. For us, it's more about like learning from Shias what we have to offer pretty much, what we think of reality or existence or the things that Ilyas is speaking about.
Do you feel like it's like it enhances your quality of life, this philosophy, or
Yeah,
is it just
because a
kind of
lot of
like tacked on and like
so bro,
affect it however it affects it, whether good or bad?
for us really, and you might not know about Shias, we're the minority group in Islam. 2
Right.
billion plus Muslims,
Sunnis are
however much it is.
Sunnis the majority or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of our Shias and our Sunni brothers may disagree, and they have that right to have their belief and disagree. But we feel sometimes that our quote unquote sect is oppressed sometimes or misquoted, these kinds of things. So we want to clear up any misconceptions.
Yeah, that's right on, man. Rock on. So what's the next step? We did the existence thing just a second ago, and before that
Yeah.
it
So
was
so
laws of
now this.
logic. The laws of logic,
Yeah.
we have existence independent.
Yeah. So now this independent reality, right? By definition, obviously, it cannot have any parts, of course, because anything that has parts, right? It depends upon its parts for its existence, right? Such that if its parts do not exist, that thing would not exist, right? So this independent reality, by definition, is a pure unity. It's the principle of unity as well, right? So there's no there's no multiplication, or there's no part, or there's no division in this most fundamental reality, because it is independent in its own self. So you can think of it like the ground of being, where, from which there is nothing more fundamental than that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you could say, even if someone tried to say, well, what if there was like, if you're saying this existence, this fundamental existence can exist, well, if it can exist once, maybe it can exist twice. Now you have these two separate, like, fundamental things of existence, but then you could just say, if you zoom out, you have these two things as part of existence. So no matter what
Exactly.
someone says, you can just zoom out from that and say, okay, well, that is now the whole, and that's that one thing. You'll have that oneness intact.
So absolutely. So the most fundamental reality has to be absolutely simple. It cannot have any type of plurality in itself, right? And obviously, it cannot be. So all the perfections or all the, all the attributes uh, that we see in a confined and limited form in this reality, right? All of them exist in that reality. All those perfections exist in that reality without the limitation that we have, right? So it might not be a very intuitive idea to understand, but once you think about it, it would make sense. So you would see that in this realm of reality, we have different things, right? And all these different things have certain kinds of perfections, right? But all of us are limited in some certain ways, right? um, Fulan thing is limited in a certain way, other things are limited in a certain way, right? You have trees, you have humans, you have everything, right? But in reality, what is the thing that is unifying all of us, right? We have our differences, but what is the thing that is common among everything that exists? What is that thing?
Existence
If you
itself.
think exactly, existence itself. So the ground of existence itself has all these perfections in itself, and it is absolutely simple. And everything else in existence is in a way like a mirror, right? So the mirror, as you know, has no light of its own. What does a mirror do? A mirror just takes light from the external source and reflects it, right? So just like that, the dependent existents are like mirrors. They don't have any existence of their own, right? What they do is that they are given or they are granted existence by the source of existence, and they are actively substantiated by it, right? Just like, for example, if you have a mirror and that is reflecting light, as soon as you stop the source of light, the mirror would not be reflecting anymore, right? So at every moment, the mirror is reflecting light. It is being substantiated by the source of light. Just like that, every moment that we are existing, we are being substantiated by this fundamental source of existence. So in that sense, this source of existence is very immediate to us. Like it's a I don't want to make a religious reference, but one verse of Quran says, "Nahnu aqrabu min hablil warid," that we are even closer to you than your jugular vein. Like it's very close to us. Like we can't even explain it in material terms, of course, because whenever we talk about material terms, we have this idea of space, right? So once one thing is in one space, the other thing cannot be in the same space, right? But with existence obviously transcends even the concept of space itself, because space is also an existent. So this source of existence, it's like permeating everything, every dependent thing, and at every moment we are being substantiated by it, and every moment we are being unified by it as well. So everything in reality, no matter what you see, is actually in a sense partaking in this fundamental principle.
I'm on board.
No, yeah, that's our metaphysics. That's what we believe.
Mashallah ji. Baba, who is this S. Dot brother? Is he a
I
hadith
don't know.
rejector?
No,
Doesn't
no, you
matter.
can ask them. You can ask them if you want to.
For us, bro, when it
Salam.
comes to religion, our first yardstick that we use is logic and reason. If something is not logical, is not reasonable, we don't accept it, no matter what. It's a fundamental principle we hold by.
Absolutely, and Timothy also agreed. That's good. So, Timothy, do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts about it? Do you want to say anything?
I got a
I don't know.
question
I'm
in
just kind of.
regards to that.
Go ahead.
In regards to everything has to be logical. So, like the Mu'jiza of Musa hitting the with his stick and splitting the ocean, that's not logical.
No, that's also logical. That's one of the miracles, right? So a miracle
Yeah.
is just the actualization of a potentiality, right? And it is not a something that is impossible in itself. The only thing that a miracle has is that it is khilaf al-aada. It is not in line with the aada. Aada is the normalcy or what happens in the day-to-day affairs, right?
Right, but
But it is not
Iblis,
khilaf al-aql.
that doesn't like that doesn't like ما بياخذ العقل like Hamza said. It goes.
No, it
By the way,
doesn't
you're
go
right.
against.
One second, Elias.
Which law of
If I,
logic does it kind of violate?
Yeah, it doesn't violate the laws of logic. It only goes against induction. When we say logic, when we say aql, we only mean deduction, deductive logic, which is istakhraj, or which is istinbat, right? We are not talking about istiqra, because things can go against istiqra, they can go against induction, right? Because induction does not necessitate the truth of the propositions. It just probabilizes about the truth of the proposition. So things can violate induction, of course, that's very much possible. And as science progresses, it starts disagreeing with its own conclusion as well many times. So obviously induction can be wrong, but deduction cannot be wrong. Deduction is solid, it's foolproof.
And can I ask what the miracle was again that he said?
The Moses splitting the Red Sea.
Or Moses and the stick.
So, yeah, I mean, you're calling it a miracle. I feel like there's always like an interaction problem with like miracles, because you're basically just saying there's cause and effect happening. At what point does that become a miracle? Like because he busts a stick and
So exactly, for us, for the Islamic philosophers, right? If you think about it and even in reality, if you just think about it, even quantum mechanics is talking, even our own existence right now is a miracle. It's no different. It is in an ontological sense, it is no different than Moses splitting the sea in front of you. No
yeah, but if you're
different.
saying he's splitting the sea, you're assuming something has happened to give the power of him putting the staff in the water have that effect. Like it's even if it's not normally someone putting a stick in the sea, that wouldn't happen. But whoever's saying that miracle is happening is still assuming that power is coming from somewhere, whether it be God or whatever. So that's still just a direct cause and effect sequence of events leading up to something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same sense, with that logic, God is is the source of our existence too. So if it's the same, God gave the power there, he's giving the power now. So in the same sense, our life is also a miracle. And by the way, the sea splitting is actually illogical if and only if there is no simple divine reality. But because there is, then it's opened within the realm of possibility. See?
أحسنت.
Yeah, so were you saying something, Timothy?
No, just that sometimes I have a hard time with religion that doesn't adhere to a kind of like naturalistic philosophy, because I feel like anything that you're saying is happening, and this is kind of semantic, which as you can see is kind of a theme with me, but anything that you can say that can happen, whether it's a miracle or God or whatever, if you're saying it's happening and you've already assumed the laws of logic are these fundamental things, then there's just a way of understanding it, and it's almost like the word supernatural no longer has any meaning, and the word
Absolutely. The
miracle.
word this is exactly why for both the Islamic
Yeah.
philosophers and as well as Spinoza, who was also one of the greatest naturalistic philosophers, we don't believe in the existence of supernatural in the sense that there is something violating natural itself. No. Reality is reality. It is itself. Everything that happens in reality is natural, right? Even this fundamental reality, in the sense that you're using it, it is natural. Nothing violates this basis of naturality. We are
In,
not like we don't
Ilyas
deny
Baba,
that.
instead of
Yeah,
using the
I
word
like
natural,
that.
you can use the word real. Yeah. We don't even have to use the word natural or nature,
Right.
because these words, do not have any let's say, intrinsic meaning in this regard, as far as our discussion is concerned.
Yeah, if you're eliminating supernatural, then there's really no
Yeah.
point to have the other side of the coin there to
There is
distinguish it
nothing
again.
like natural or unnatural or supernatural.
Yeah, it's just reality presenting itself, unloading itself, or manifesting itself. That is what there's this even this dichotomy between natural and unnatural is wrong, because you're trying to say something. Oh, there could be something outside reality. What even are you trying to say, right? It's only just reality which is representing itself to itself.
Baba, nature is somehow, a specific behavior of reality. It is not the reality, as a whole itself.
Yeah,
So this
if
is
by
where the
nature you
confusion.
mean the that which we talk about through inductive laws, yeah, that is just a normal kind of behavior that we see. There's no necessity that this behavior has to be universal, right? And as we learn more, we start we start knowing about even more and more fundamental laws of physics, right? And which are basically a part of the laws of existence itself, right? So as we know more and more fundamental physical laws, we would realize that, oh, the previous law that we held was actually just a generalization of actual reality, and so on and so forth, till we reach the absolutely simple principle, which obviously is not physical in itself, because everything that is physical has dimensions and has can be divided, but this reality is obviously infinite and cannot be divided. So we as we go down in the fundamental physical level, we start approaching this reality. We would never reach this reality in our through our at least experimental means. Obviously through other means we might be able to reach it, just like logically we have proved its existence. But through physical means, as we go down, we would see that uh, our previous laws that we held were just generalizations, and now they are more fundamental laws as well. For example, in quantum mechanics, now we have quantum field theory, right? In quantum field theory, just as I was saying, there is no difference between um, a mountain in front of you just vanishing into nothing, right? And then coming back into existence. That is that has a non-zero probability in quantum field theory, right? And quantum field theory right now is our best approximation of what reality is, what physical reality is at least, right? And in quantum field theory, at the same time, there's no contradiction in saying that you can have a sea splitting in an instant. There's no contradiction in that either. That has also
Yeah,
has a non-zero probability. So
I think
that's
this is
what
a
we
good
are saying.
point. Yeah, I think that's a good.
In an infinite amount of time, it's a certainty.
Yeah, in an infinite amount of time, it's a certainty. Absolutely.
I think the way you can look at it as well, Timothy. I think also I do agree with the brothers that I don't really believe in a distinction between the supernatural and the natural. That's what you really see more in the contemporary scene.
Christian,
But
yeah,
um, yeah, exactly.
or Salafi.
When you compare,
Our worldview, our metaphysics is very different. You wouldn't find
Mhm.
many of us even in
Yeah,
Muslims. So the
yeah,
majority of Muslims you have talked to, they might not talk like this. Well, they
yeah,
definitely would not
mhm.
talk like this. So
Definitely not.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. And
sorry,
the way you
carry
can
on.
look
Yeah.
at it. Yeah, so I just want to say, like Timothy, the way you can look at the specific miracle is essentially, so in the example that the brother gave with respect, to the parting of the sea or the snake, the rod turning into a snake, this is just one way, or one of the potentials that nature has, right? Because for one to say that, it would be somehow impossible for this potential or this event to take place, one would have to demonstrate from a rational perspective that this potential cannot actually take place, right? It cannot actually be, right, and that's going to be too much of a burden because you're essentially trying to show a physical impossibility, but that's not going to happen through some empirical means. So what you can see, the way you can look at it is that nature has this potential, right? That has this potential to actually take this form, this type of event, and it happens in specific moments, right? But for one to say there's a contradiction, just as I said, right, he would have to demonstrate that this type of potential cannot actually come into being, right? And that's, as I said, it's going to be too much of a burden. So, you can look at it from that perspective where, as the brothers showed, there's no distinction between supernatural and natural, and that a miracle is essentially just a potential or a way nature can take in some sense, right? So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
So
almost feel like you can word it stronger. Like, I almost feel like if we're talking about infinite time and basic things, just like rocky matter and water, these miracles, like a sea splitting, as improbable as they are, if they're non-zero, like we're talking about, they're going to happen more than once. They're going to keep happening. It's just a
Absolutely,
combination
absolutely.
of
Like
no, but
even
guys,
let's
so
think of a
they
even simple thing, even in physical reality, right? But I think nobody was going to believe us if I would say that, oh, we have a natural nuclear reactor, right? I am 100% sure nobody would believe this. They would say, what are you crazy? You're telling me the nuclear reactor which humans made after so much preparation, this and that, we can have a natural nuclear reactor? Absolutely impossible. But guess what we did? Scientists have found, natural nuclear reactions in nature, which is on Earth, which is absolutely mind blowing. So it just shows that what we think of as improbable, given
until it isn't.
time and given certain conditions, it can absolutely happen.
So then, Ilyas, is there any impossibilities?
Yeah, just like there are contradictions in your own self, such as
It's
a
a good
squared
question.
circle, such as a squared circle, a married bachelor. These things are impossibilities because they are negations in their own selves. Other than
Yeah,
that, there's no impossibility.
a philosophical Wahhabi too.
Nice. So,
So I
Ilyas,
feel like where like the other shoe would normally drop is like, and I say this a lot, and like when I'm talking to theists, it's usually Christians, but if I like, and I like what you guys are saying, like this is a really cool room. But if I agree with everything you're saying, and I agree with all like the issues and laws of logic, and this makes sense, and we're eventually going to get to the point where God is invoked. And if I follow you all the way down to that point where God's invoked, agreeing with everything you're saying, at that point, the theist, I feel like, is attributing detail where I'm not comfortable attributing detail or making any more assumptions. And once you get past that point, that's where I'm just not
Mhm,
comfortable making more
mhm.
assumptions, because now we're talking about a fundamental level of reality that like I'm just not going to claim to understand in that kind of way, and just I
so
personally
We
don't know.
we
hey,
we
just
yeah we
hey,
don't claim to understand it either. So what kind of
Elias.
details do you?
one
Yes,
second.
yes,
So
brother.
with
What?
that concept, it basically explained in terms of some supernatural power, which means God caused them to occur. This proves the existence of God. So miracles are violations of natural laws. Natural laws are immutable. So if it's impossible for immutable laws to be violated, does that make sense? So miracles are impossible.
I don't agree with that.
No, miracle. So see, natural laws, what quote unquote laws, are inductive. They are not deductive. They are not logical as such. So there can be
Yeah,
violations
but
of
miracles
quote unquote.
miracles are violations of natural laws.
But don't use the
No,
word
they don't necessarily.
impossible.
Yeah, they don't
well, there's
necessarily have to be violations of national laws. For example, the Muslims affirm the miracle of.
No, like that. This is a specific miracle.
Yeah. So not all miracles. I don't believe miracles have to be a violation of natural law, no, or sorry, of physical laws even. There can be miracles absolutely which are not violations of physical laws. Especially given quantum field theory, I don't believe in
Yeah, what
physical
about the
laws as
quantum
such either.
thing? Was it did you not hear the what's your response to the quantum thing?
I think he missed it.
Can I say something? The miracle is not something that violates natural law. According to our understanding, mu'jiza is something that subdues your reason,
No,
or ayah is
natural
something
laws
as
are
sign.
immutable.
So there is no miracle in a sense that it would violate the natural law. We don't believe that. The miracles
Yeah, yeah.
in Arabic, it is
It makes you
No,
mu'jiza.
but
ajiz. Yeah, it
brother,
is
brother,
Yeah,
mu'jiza. It
like
makes you
Ilyas,
the
ajiz.
brother Ilyas, natural
double
laws
split test.
are immutable. They can't
The,
be changed. Like,
I
before
mean,
before the
if you
double
think
split
about it,
test, that would have been called what happened in that test would have been called a miracle.
Exactly. Before we understood that, exactly that's what I'm saying. Like those things can even be explained by science. I believe there could be miracles which can be explained by science. But the point of the miracle is that it just is a happening which makes people think in a certain way. That's all it is. Anyway,
Yeah.
let us continue back to the point that you were
Yes,
making, Brother
please.
Timothy. You were saying that like theists attribute some detail to God which you're not comfortable with. So what kind of
I feel like
details were you thinking about?
well, I feel like usually at least I want to say you guys 'cause I don't know how you'll respond to it yet, but usually at some point the theists will attribute some sort of detail. Once you get to again, we get to that point of all these issues, then all these causes and effects, and how do we get down to the bottom of everything? And I agree with everything they say. Once you get to that point where they're invoking God, and I'm just invoking the word something, I will say I agree with you. Something has to explain these things. I got to stop at the word something though, because anything beyond just saying something, I'm going to be start attributing detail and making assumptions that I feel like I personally don't know if those are
Don't
true, and
use
I
the
would say I
word
don't
What
God.
know.
kind of yeah, what kind of details are you thinking about?
Um, I mean, whatever any like theist would say, as far as like God created morality or perfection or love or all these things, and He has these
Oh, like
attributes,
the attributes
or
of
He is,
God?
or like there's the Trinity. You've heard of the Trinity. I'm assuming
Yeah, yeah, we
that's
obviously
attributing
we don't
detail.
believe in the Trinity.
I think there's
But
a
that's
lot
what I'm
of
talking
baggage,
about, though. Now that's an example of what I'm talking about,
but I
though. Is
think there's
that
a
Yeah,
lot
now
yeah.
of
there's
baggage that
the
comes with
detail being
Okay,
believing God.
attributed.
okay,
Baba,
okay. I
Baba,
understand.
actually, he's saying that. Baba, he's actually saying that he's not comfortable with an idea of a non-deistic God. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. It's similar. I
That's
think I
fair.
understand what you're saying, Timothy. So basically, one thing you have to understand, Timothy. Obviously, this fundamental reality, this is not devoid of consciousness in any way, right? Because obviously we are limited realities, right? And we have consciousness. The fundamental reality by definition has consciousness, right? Or rather it has the supreme consciousness. That's one thing that we rather it, even to say it has supreme consciousness, we say it like it transcends even this notion of consciousness itself. It is the most fundamental reality, right? So
I
that's
guess,
one
but
thing.
when I
Yeah.
think of consciousness, I feel like I should try to think of it in the way I experience it and understand it, and then try
Mm-hmm.
to draw a relationship between it and what people mean by a greater consciousness. And when I think of my own consciousness, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of think of like sorry, like Husserl and what was Husserl's philosophy? The word's escaping me right
The
now.
Ismaili philosophy,
Um,
No, no.
Nasir
basically the
Khusro.
idea is that
Baba, in simple
Oh,
word,
Baba,
you're
yaar,
God
let him
is
speak, yaar.
God
Baba, ek
is.
minute.
Go ahead,
basically the
Yeah.
idea
Timothy.
is that when you're conscious, it's always about something. There's always an object or a subject of your
Yeah,
consciousness.
yeah. For
Um,
for the
so then if I'm
for the
thinking about
absolute
like,
reality, it is his own self.
and that seems
What would be your
not how I
No,
have
objection?
observed consciousness. That seems like
no,
something
no.
different.
Because many times when we are conscious, right, and if you have tried meditation as well, it would become even more clear to you that even the most barest form of consciousness is actually the consciousness of your own self.
That's how consciousness acts within this system. But if
Mm-hmm.
the consciousness is part, so why would consciousness have like a subset of consciousness? Like that's what I'm trying to wonder. And why would it behave differently? So there's a consciousness, and then there's a different, smaller consciousness within that consciousness that behaves differently
Mm-hmm.
than the greater consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't behave differently as such. for the Islamic philosophers. In one way, it does behave differently, and I would explain why. Why does it behave differently? But in one way, it does not behave differently. So the reason why the contingent realities, why the dependent realities behave in a sense differently from this fundamental reality, it's again we can give the example of light. It is because of this that as the realities are becoming dependent, they are being substantiated, they are becoming limited, right? They do not truly mirror the fundamental reality in its entirety, right? So they start getting limited in certain ways, right? So I am limited, you are limited, everything is limited around us that we see, right? So for the Islamic philosophers, I will just explain to you our metaphysics a little bit. So for us, there is this fundamental reality, right? Now, this fundamental reality directly only bears existence or gives existence to another reality, which is also immaterial, right? We call it the first intellect, right? Why? Because the fundamental reality cannot give existence directly to multiple distinct limited realities. Why not? Because then what you are saying is that the fundamental reality itself has only one perfection. That perfection is existence itself. It is identical to existence. And if you're saying that it is creating multiple effects, then this is a philosophical principle that a change in the effect entails a change in the cause, right? Because obviously suppose if you have all the same conditions, right? If every condition in the cause is the same, then the effect would be the same, right? And if there is a difference in the effect, then there has to be by definition a difference in the cause, right? But the most fundamental reality by definition is unchanging. It cannot change in any way. So by definition it cannot create multiple things directly, right? So it makes one thing directly, and then that one thing makes another thing, and so on. And as this chain goes on, we start seeing multiplicity, right? So things becoming limited, and so on and so forth, till we reach this point in this universe. Even in here, we believe that we are being substantiated by an intellect, by a conscious mind. This conscious mind is not the fundamental reality, right? But this is still a consciousness which is holding our material reality, right? And this consciousness, we call it the active intellect. And there are many proofs for it. The active intellect in even from obviously from a logical lens, but even from an inductive lens. That's why, like, even if you like go on to read quantum mechanics, right? So you would have views like pan computational psychism or pan psychism, like views like that, which hold. And many, like, even it's not like these are like uh just like random views. Like even many like mm, educated people, speculate about this, that oh, the basis of all uh, uh, quantum interactions appears to be a conscious substrate. But anyway, so what we say is that we are also a manifestation of this active intellect. Now, in one sense, we are getting direct substantiation from this active intellect, and in one sense we are communicating with this active intellect itself by observing the reality outside of us, right? So in one sense, even the reality that is outside of it is not truly outside of it. Why? Because we have a connection with the active intellect, right? And this reality which is in the outside world is also substantiated by the active intellect, right? So if we unify our connection with the active intellect, we would actually become identical to the reality that is outside of us as well, right? So, well, that's a more complex thing to say, but but that's what I'm trying to explain it to you. And this idea also is kind of close to Berkeley's idealism as well, if you have read a little bit about that.
So how about
Thanks,
like
man.
reality begins with existence?
What, brother?
Like how about reality begins with existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are things that exist, what we call, and then there's, so if they exist, then there had to been there before.
I don't understand what you're saying, brother.
So what we call like existence, what is their mode of existence? Like how do they exist?
What exists?
Like reality.
It exists on its own. It is a necessity in itself.
So have some of them always been there with other existence coming later?
Are you asked? Yeah. So God, obviously, the fundamental reality is always there. The fundamental unconditioned reality is always there.
They were saying before that you can't strip away, if you were to strip everything away that exists, and then you
Yeah,
get to that last
yeah,
thing
in an
and you get rid of
ontological
it, now
sense.
there's no existence. So we know
Absolutely.
existence exists, and we know if you strip away that last thing, there would be no existence. Therefore, there has to be something fundamentally independent that exists to make existence be a concept.
Exactly.
Damn, Timothy is a Muslim philosopher now, eh?
Or at the very least, a philosopher.
Yeah. At least I like your sincerity, Timothy. Yeah, so usually we don't see that much, interaction with the atheists. But if you do have any questions or if you want to, you have some comments, go ahead.
He said a lot in the last paragraph. It's heavy.
Yeah, or if anyone else even has questions, if you want to share the room, guys can always share the room as well
So yes, I
and
have a question.
invite more.
Why are you saying that the fundamental reality can only create the one thing and not multiple things? Why is that? Where's the contradiction?
Yeah, so it's called the rule of one. So the fundamental reality, everyone would agree if they have thought logically about it, that it is absolutely simple. There are no parts in it, right? So it only has one perfection, a cause and effect. In a cause and effect relationship, what is happening? The cause is actualizing the effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cause is actualizing the effect. The cause is passing some of its perfection to the effect, right? It could be a carpenter, the carpenter has an idea in their mind, right? And they shape the wood in a certain way, right? So they are uh, transferring multiple of their, perfections, such as creativity and, their kinesthetic dexterity and everything, so, and a footballer is kicking the ball, they're passing on the motion to the ball, right? Or things like that. Now, what have we said? We have said that the fundamental reality has one perfection, and that is unified, right? Now, if it has only one perfections, right? And it is giving, obviously, it has one perfection, so it is like you have one coin, you can give it to one person, right? Now, it has one perfection, and it is passing that perfection on to the other effect, right? Now, suppose you have two effects. Now, either the two effects are identical to each other or are different in one respect, at least one respect. Now, if they're identical to each other, case closed, you already have one effect. Now, if they're different from each other, right, then there is at least one respect, right, in which the first effect is different from the second effect, right? But that is impossible because both the effects were given the same kind and same configuration of perfection, right? So it could not have entailed a difference in the effect. You understand? For there to be a difference in the effect, there has to be a difference in the cause. Suppose you have a footballer and you have a football, and all the conditions, literally all the conditions are the same. He has the same foot size. The rain is the same. The external conditions are absolutely the same. The weight of the football is absolutely everything is completely same, right? And the footballer kicks a ball. Would you see two different effects or a singular effect?
So, Elias, though, I believe what you're referring to is one of Spinoza's axioms, which is the knowledge of the cause is involved in the knowledge of the effect. Correct?
Yes, 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 yes. So
Okay.
that's what
So it,
Spinoza
okay.
says, that in Islamic philosophy we call it basitul haqiqa kullul ashya, that
Okay.
the
Interesting.
fundamental reality is everything. And Spinoza
Okay.
calls it, yeah, Spinoza says
And,
that cause of the knowledge of the effect entails the knowledge of the cause.
yeah. And what you're saying essentially is that if there is two effects, or that are at least in one respect distinct, then the knowledge of the effect of, let's say, effect A um, would involve a knowledge of the cause, but because effect B would be different, then it would involve a slightly different knowledge of the
Exactly,
cause. Okay, I see.
exactly. But the cause is
Ilas,
one.
Ilas,
Yeah.
this can you relate this to the great chain of consciousness?
Of what, brother?
Would you be able to like relate this to the great chain of consciousness, which allows like with metaphysics and how the universe content and the contents are alive?
The great chain of being.
No, the great chain of consciousness.
Uh, that I don't think I've seen that. I've seen the great chain to the chain of being. That's exactly what it is. But the great chain of consciousness, that I would have to check.
So it's basically it's how metaphysicians have seen the universe and all of its contents alive.
Yeah, yeah, we believe that everything is alive. That's true. That's what panpsychism is. Everything is alive in a single in one respect. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything, feel free.
Well, I get what you're saying. It makes logical sense to me what you're saying about this passing on of this like perfect. If we're talking about perfect, that's just like a singular concept, and if it's a cause and effect, it's going to have that one effect. Otherwise, that cause couldn't have been a perfect cause. But how did
Absolutely.
when we get to like our observation of just like the universe on like a local, you know, scale, we'd see a diversity of concepts of matter and space and time and all these things. Where is that perfect cause and effect breaking down to where we're seeing a diverse observation?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
is
So
are you just
it's
talking about like a zoomed out view of everything? That's the perfect concept. The oneness of everything is that perfect concept.
so so we believe in the gradation of being, which is tashkik, right? So what is happening is that this reality is being graded, right? So it's like the as you go away from the source of light, you become dim, right? As the more away from the source of light you are, the less light you get, right? So that is what is happening, right? Why we see multiplicity is because the things we are away in an ontological sense from absolute unity, right? The absolute unity creates one thing, right? That thing has a kind of multiplicity. Why? Because that thing is dependent, right? So now in this thing which he has created, which is one, it has two aspects. It has existence and it has essence. It has the fact that it exists, and then it has the fact that it depends upon something for its existence. And these two facts about it are not identical to each other. Then this creates another thing, right? It would have three aspects, right? And so on. And through this series, through this gradation, we have reached this point. We have reached the active intellect, which obviously itself is very graded because it has this differentiation, right? But even if you look at
Will
its differentiation, yeah, yeah, yes, go ahead.
will we reach and is it going to degrade forever? Will it eventually degrade to nothing, to barely any effect, or
No, no. Well, so the thing is, uh, in one sense, it is going to degrade forever, right? But in the other sense, you would get a reality, right? So which also right, our reality, like just we are in the mind of the active intellect, right? We have our own minds as well, right? And in our minds we do create our own ideas, right? So that's our effect, right? So the point that we have reached it, now this is not that we don't know it through logical reasoning, we don't know it through immediate experience, right? So that what we know through immediate experience is that there is nothing which is even more graded than us, right? There isn't any another realm of reality which is even more graded than us. Why? Because had it been there, it would have been it would have been, it would have been substantiated by us, right? It because we would have been the cause of it, in not like a, not in like a, cause as in the carpenter causes the wood, right? Not in that sense, but in like an ontological sense, just like we are the causes
Because it would have
of
had to
our.
come from a same cause as us, and you can't have the two different effects because of that.
No, no. Yeah, but if you had two different effects, they would be on the same scale, right?
Well, that's
So
why you're saying there couldn't be a different, greater
yeah,
reality,
yeah,
because it
yeah,
would have had to come from
exactly,
the same.
exactly. So this active intellect creates us. That's what we know. And in one sense, all of us are same, right? Even obviously in the sense of existence, we are the same. But at the same time, even in the sense of matter, we are the same, right? Because all of us are, well, I shouldn't say matter, but in the sense of energy, right? And I'm trying not to use the energy in like a pseudo scientific rash. Yeah, in that way I'm using energy in its strict physical definition, right?
You could
So
use Wujood, like
no, wujud
existence.
is exist, yeah, wujud is existence. That is obviously mushtarik in all of us, that is common in all of us. But I'm
Right. So
saying
like
even,
finding and like we can you could argue that there is a deep connection between the being, the finding, the consciousness, the bliss, right, and the self awareness.
yeah, so I was making this point that even in this reality, we are obviously identical with respect to existence, but we are also identical with respect that we are energy, physical energy. So even in that respect, all of us are one. And then all of us are modes of this physical energy. And by physical energy, I don't mean the pseudo-scientific, like the neo-spiritualist type who say, oh, there's energy going around. I mean it in like the purest physical form as to what they mean by energy, energy mass uh, conversion and Einstein's E is equal to mc squared and whatever. But that's what I'm saying. So the total amount of the energy in the universe remains constant.
Interesting.
So Elias, so basically, the, if all things are modes of God's consciousness.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, Timothy. Yeah,
Do you see an objection somewhere, Timothy?
What was the
Hey,
question?
that's great.
Do you have any objection to what Elias said? But it's hard. It makes sense.
I guess I'm trying to understand this. I have a hard time with this different kind of understanding of consciousness. I hear where you're coming from. I don't hear anything like crazy, like, oh, it's a contradiction and makes no sense. I get the perspective. I'm not opposed to it. I just personally
So you're saying subjectively
don't.
you don't feel right with it?
Yeah, because I think of how
That's
I
fair.
understand consciousness, and now I'm trying to make sense of this greater consciousness, which I don't know what it's like to be this greater consciousness. I don't know what it's like to mean there's this fundamental aspect of reality that's aware of itself in any kind of way that this subset of that consciousness, us, would be.
Elias, what would you say to
hmm
that?
No, that's fine. That's absolutely what we believe in as well. There's no disagreement with you on that fact. Obviously, we what we can know is that it would have all the perfections. We can't even think what does it mean to have all the perfections, right? This is exactly why obviously we live a good life, but we also focus on uh, getting in line with this higher reality. And how do you do that? Obviously through meditative things, and obviously you're playing music. That's one way in which the order is established in the soul. I don't mean rock music.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean classical music, or
Matters the frequency.
yeah, the frequencies matter, of course. But yeah, that's how you create order in your soul, which makes you realize, which gives you like a, because you're absolutely right. If you don't have the experience of that thing, you wouldn't be able to make a claim about it, right? So that's why we also focus on getting that experience as to how this fundamental reality is bestowing us existence, right? And that you can do by, by going in nature. You can realize that by meditating, you can get that certain kind of experience of unity, and there are other things as well, of course. So that's how we prefer our existence.
Wow. Well, guys, it's really been really cool talking to you, and honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, with
I
you too,
followed
bro.
a couple of you, but yeah. If you're in a
Feel
room
free to
again,
drop
ping me.
by anytime, man.
Hell yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, buddy.